You always look for the easiest, most efficient way to get things done. You get extremely irritated when you see someone doing a task in an overly complicated, roundabout way. Or maybe you simply catch yourself muttering and talking to yourself all the time. What if I told you that you might actually have a much higher IQ than you realize? People with high intelligence are usually the ones who break the mold. Instead of following the well-trodden path, they come up with crazy, unconventional ideas that turn out to be incredibly effective. But here's the twist: in prehistoric times, having high intelligence was a mistake of nature. I'll bet that in any era there have always been individuals with exceptional minds, and the Stone Age was no exception. So, how were these exceptionally intelligent people treated back then? What was their daily life like? The answer would horrify most people living today. Scientists have uncovered a wealth of evidence spanning history and continents. What they've found are clear traces of advanced thinking. These discoveries have led many researchers to believe that individuals with superior cognition and consciousness existed even in prehistoric times. The most compelling examples are tools and artifacts that were far too complex to have been created solely for basic survival instincts. Someone had to imagine and invent something that had never existed before. From a scientific perspective, the emergence of these suddenly intelligent individuals in prehistoric times was not random. It was the result of the interplay between biological mutations and intense survival pressures. According to archaeologist Stephen Mython, the difference between intelligent prehistoric individuals and the rest was not simply thinking faster, but the ability to break down the barriers between different functional regions of the brain. In a typical modular brain, the regions operate separately. The hunting module only knows how to hunt, and the social module only knows how to communicate. These people might be excellent hunters, but could not use social knowledge to improve their weapons. In contrast, intelligent individuals had a more fluid or loosely connected cognitive structure. They could draw ideas across domains. For example, they might observe a spider's web in nature and invent a fishing net, or use drawings and art to create hunting maps. Scientists call this fluid intelligence. So why did intelligent people appear in prehistoric times? During the Ice Age, the environment was extremely unstable and unpredictable. Those who relied only on instinct or imitation were eliminated when old food sources disappeared. Individuals with genetic variations that granted higher neuroplasticity had a better chance of survival. They were the ones who dared to experiment with new fruits or create new weapons when large animals went extinct. At that time, intelligence became a survival tool strongly favored by natural selection. Imagine you were one of those exceptionally intelligent individuals appearing in a prehistoric community that had operated on pure instinct and habit for millions of years. To nurture new ideas, you needed more food or rest time to think. In the eyes of the other members who were optimized to conserve energy for survival, someone who sat still observing the stars or fiddling with stones instead of hunting was seen as lazy or useless. You could be ostracized given smaller food portions, or considered a burden until you proved the value of your ideas. Every day, the entire tribe had to run for miles, exhausting all their energy just to earn a tiny meal. But something strange began to emerge in your mind. Why does everything have to be so difficult? While others followed their instincts and repeated the same old ways for generations, you started seeing things differently. When the tribe charged straight at prey, you wondered, what if we made it walk into a trap instead? When people dragged heavy objects by hand, you began tying vines together. When others saw only a stone, you saw a tool. And that may have been the first moment intelligence began to separate humans from the rest of nature. Do you believe there were once individuals who created something that even modern technology has struggled to surpass? It was the sharpest blade in the world, the obsidian knife made from volcanic glass. When properly crafted, its edge was sharper than many modern metal knives. Our ancestors discovered it, shaped it, and used it. When the stone was fractured correctly, the edge was so thin it could slice through meat almost instantly. From that moment, humans began carrying nature's own fangs in their hands. In the eyes of the tribe, it was just a strange black stone. But in the eyes of a few extraordinary individuals, it was a weapon that had never existed before. You began to question the old ways. You could no longer accept because it has always been done this way. And that very doubt changed everything. Instead of chasing antelope exhaustingly all day, you observed them passing through a narrow mountain pass and came up with the idea of piling up rocks to create a natural trap. Instead of digging for roots with bare hands, you attached a sharpened stick to a stone and suddenly dug twice as fast. The first crazy ideas of humankind did not come from the whole tribe, but from one or two unusual individuals who could not tolerate wasteful, inefficient effort. They were not the strongest. They were not the fastest runners. They simply could not stand doing things the hardest way possible. And that very discomfort became the greatest evolutionary driving force of humanity. In prehistoric society, the survival of the entire group depended on consensus and repetition. Everyone did the same things, hunted the same way, ate the same things. Change equaled the risk of starvation. A single mistaken idea could cost the whole tribe 3 days without food enough to kill the children and the elderly. Therefore, those who were different were seen as a threat. Shocking facts that scientists have discovered. At some archaeological sites in Europe, dating back 40,000-20,000 years ago, skeletons were found with signs of heavy blows to the head or bodies excluded from the main burial grounds. Some researchers suggest these may be traces of eliminating the different ones when their experiments failed too many times. In modern hunter-gatherer tribes that still exist, such as the Hadza Kung or some Amazonian tribes, overly creative individuals are often initially isolated or mocked. They are called dreamers, or people who think too much. Your brain consumes an enormous amount of energy. Intelligent people need to eat 20–30% more than average just to sustain their thinking. In times of food scarcity like the Ice Age, sitting and thinking instead of foraging was viewed as freeloading. You were given less meat. You were pushed to the edge when caves were divided. Women in the tribe might hesitate to pair with you, fearing that your strange genes would make their children abnormal too. Intelligence helped you survive, but it also made you terribly lonely. You became the person who constantly muttered to yourself, the one who got irritated seeing others do things the old, inefficient way, the one who always looked for ways to optimize everything. And these very traits made you an outsider in the eyes of those around you. There were nights when you sat alone by the fire, watching everyone else laughing together, and quietly asked yourself, why was I born? Why is it that the more I try to help them, the more they fear me? That was the oldest tragedy of humankind. The intelligent ones were not always celebrated heroes. In many cases, they were seen as eccentric burdens, or potential threats that needed to be controlled or cast out. But nature has never played fair, because these very outcasts were the only ones capable of saving the entire tribe when the environment suddenly changed. When the Ice Age reached its peak, large animals died off and snow blanketed the grasslands. Only those madmen who had once invented traps, nets, food storage, and clothing from animal hides could help the tribe survive the long winter. At that moment, the tribe's fear began to transform. When the peak of the Ice Age arrived, snow reached knee height, and the great herds vanished, the whole tribe faced starvation. Suddenly, the crazy ideas of the outcast from before became lifelines. You, the one once called lazy, the one who received less meat, now stood up. You led the entire tribe to a deep cave that only you knew about. Using wooden sticks and obsidian blades, you dug a fire pit, placed heated stones inside, and covered them with earth. You brought out the fire ember you had carefully preserved for days. Within one night, the cave warmed up. For the first time in many weeks, the tribe stopped shivering uncontrollably. They looked at you with completely different eyes. Fear began turning into respect. You designed camouflaged pit traps with sharpened stakes and leaves. A deer weighing over 200 kilograms fell in. The tribe had meat for 10 straight days. Those who once whispered behind your back fell silent. You observed a willow tree ground its leaves and bark into powder and applied it to a feverish child's wound. The wound healed with surprising speed. When someone understood nature far more deeply than the rest, the tribe no longer thought this is strange. They began to think this person understands things we don't. Archaeologists have found extremely strong evidence for this phase. In Chauvet Cave, France, 36,000 years ago, there are animal paintings so vivid and three-dimensional that modern experts are still amazed. The artist must have possessed extraordinary imagination and observational skills. In Blombos Cave, South Africa, 77,000 years ago, perforated seashells turned into beads were found along with pigment powders and mixing tools, clear signs of abstract thinking and symbolic communication. The Schoningen spears and composite tools, glue plus stone plus wood, could only have been created by exceptional individuals, after which the rest of the tribe copied them. By this point, the tribe no longer gave you less meat. They gave you the best portions. They let you sit closest to the fire. Women began to look at you differently. Children gathered around you to hear stories about the world that only you could see. In many parts of this world, Siberia, Africa, the Americas, the first shamans all shared common traits. They were different, dreamy, deeply observant of nature, capable of healing and prediction. In reality, they were the exceptionally intelligent individuals of prehistoric times. Intelligence and deification became closely intertwined very early on. Today, those different ones from prehistoric times have not disappeared. They are still living among us, only the environment has changed. If you often talk to yourself, feel irritated by inefficient ways of doing things, always look for ways to optimize everything, and connect seemingly unrelated ideas. Your brain is the direct legacy of those Stone Age shamans and innovators. Shocking scientific insights. Cognitive fluidity. Stephen Mythen's concept remains the foundation of all modern breakthroughs. People whose brains strongly connect different regions. Art, technology, science, social are the ones who create iPhones, SpaceX, and ideas that change the world. They are the modern versions of the first person who shaped obsidian or painted the Chauvet Cave. Many researchers believe that autism and certain neurodivergent traits originated in prehistoric times. Individuals who could focus extremely deeply, notice tiny details, and think systematically were the ones who created complex tools, mapped the stars, or invented survival techniques to endure the Ice Age. Some studies even link Neanderthal genes to autistic traits in modern humans. ADHD may be a surviving hunter-gatherer gene. In a hunter-gatherer environment, restlessness, hyperfocus when interested, and the ability to react quickly to change were major survival advantages. Today, when trapped in an office for 8 hours, it becomes a disorder. Yet it is often people with ADHD who become the greatest entrepreneurs, artists, and creators. Stephen Mythen's theory suggests that before the cultural explosion, the ancient human brain was like a building with many locked rooms. The intelligent individuals of prehistoric times were the first to find the master key that unlocked all those doors. Cross-domain integration. A shaman did not view a spider's web through the eyes of a biologist alone. They used technical thinking to analyze the fiber structure, social thinking, to understand binding and connection, and natural thinking to see it as a trap. When these brain regions touched one another, the idea of a fishing net was born. This was explosive creativity, not gradual improvement. Altered states of consciousness using drum rhythms, breathing techniques, or natural elements to enter a trance state was actually a way to hack the brain. In this state, the prefrontal cortex, the logic gatekeeper, temporarily steps back, allowing neural signals to flow freely between regions that rarely communicate. This is when nonlinear solutions emerge. In contrast to our ancestors, modern humans are locking themselves into narrow drawers of knowledge. Fragmented attention. When we constantly switch tasks, the brain never reaches the flow state necessary to activate fluid intelligence. We only touch the surface of millions of pieces of information, but cannot weave them into a coherent web of knowledge. Dependence on external forces. By outsourcing our thinking to technological tools, the neural connections responsible for systematic reasoning grow weaker. Our ancestors had to build mental maps in their heads to survive, while we only need to look at a blue dot on a screen. When we no longer have to connect ideas ourselves, the brain's ability to recognize patterns begins to decline. Our ancestors thought with their entire bodies and with their environment. To them, the world was a living entity with its own voice. We, on the other hand, think through a small, glowing dot on a phone screen inside a quiet, isolated space. Loss of complex problem-solving ability. Fluid intelligence allowed our ancestors to handle unprecedented situations. Modern humans are very good at solving problems that already have procedures, but we easily fall into panic when facing uncertainty because we have lost the ability to connect weak signals from the environment. Fear of silence. Silence is the very environment in which fluid intelligence operates. By filling every gap with fragmented information, we have destroyed the opportunity for the brain to synthesize and generate breakthrough insights. We are advancing dramatically in knowledge, but quietly declining in our capacity for creative thinking, the greatest weapon of our ancestors.